And seated with me is also Deborah Hauser. Welcome, Deb.
Hi, Julia.
So I have a question for you. You were with me when we started the campaign in 2011, and at that time we chose the name because it represented the number of women who would have an abortion in her lifetime. Can you tell me a little bit about, recently the statistic has changed. Can you tell me why we decided to keep the name?
Sure. First, let me say, Julia, it's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank you publicly for all you've done for this campaign and for advocates. It's an absolute joy to have you with us, and it's really an important project, one that's really close to my heart. You're right that the statistic has changed. It used to be 1 in 3, and the Guttmacher Institute recently did additional research that says the statistic is now 1 in 4. The data comes from 2010 to 2014, and that's important because what the researchers found was that abortion went down because access to effective contraception went up, and also because restrictive access to abortion affected the rates. So what we know is that it really doesn't matter whether it's 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 or 1 in 10, that until everybody who needs abortion care can get it, we're going to be here. We're going to be here to keep fighting. We know that the rate went down during the Obama administration, but this is not the Obama administration. This is the Trump administration. And they are hell-bent not only on restricting access to abortion, but also access to contraception. So the rate is going to change. And what we do know, however, is that abortion is common. It's been common throughout the history of the world. It's been common throughout the generations of people that I know. And no politician should have the audacity to tell any of us what we need to do when we face an unintended or unplanned pregnancy. This campaign is fighting with all we've got, and we're going to keep fighting. And we chose to keep the name because it doesn't matter. Whether it's 1 in 3, 1 in 4, or 1 in 100, we will be here and continue to fight for all of us, and especially for the Janes of this world. So that's why we decided to keep the name.
Thanks, Deb. And you were also one of the very first people to share your abortion stories with the 1 in 3 campaign. Can you tell us a little bit about how you think your experience relates to Jane's?
Sure. So I've told my story so many times that so many of you have heard it. I will say this, that, I was 35 years old. I had a 6-month-old child. My husband went to work one day and he didn't come back. So, you're in this situation and you're feeling really stressed and thinking about how will you care for the child that you have. My husband didn't return for weeks and weeks and weeks. And during that time, I found out that I was pregnant. So, it seemed like such an untenable situation. And yet I know more than anything in the whole world that I am incredibly privileged, that I had access to abortion care, that I had the financial resources I needed, I had support from my family, and I was able to access the abortion care that helped me to be able to raise my son on my own for the time that I needed to do that. And to this day, I know it was the most responsible decision that I could ever have made. How it relates to Jane and the Janes of the world is that I know that I'm privileged. That's how it relates. Not everyone is as lucky to have what I have, resources and access. And so when you think about that, there's an obligation for those of us who have privilege to help fight and lift up the voices and the needs of all people who need access to abortion care. I can't even imagine what it would be like to be pregnant and alone and afraid in a detention center with someone like Scott Lloyd having the audacity to tell her that, or them, at this point we know it's multiple women, that they cannot access the care that they need. It's beyond my comprehension. We know what we need, and we need access to all the reproductive and sexual health care that's out there, and no one should have the right to restrict that from anyone for any reason.
Well, thank you so much, Deb, for sharing your story again with us and for being an incredible champion for young people and young people's access to abortion. We are so thrilled to have you, and as the president of Advocates, you really championed this campaign for the last 6 years. So thank you again for sharing your story and being with us today.